Well, I'm gonna start off this morning by taking the oil pan down in this 5.3 liter Chevy 2003 Suburban. In order to drop the oil pan though, I got to take this cross member out. It has 4 bolts, nuts in the back of them, 18 millimeter each. So I started, broke all 4 of them loose, and now I'm going to take all these 4 bolts out, drop this cross member. Should be pretty easy, and then go after the oil pan. And of course the oil pan has some cable runs going around the passenger side and the front of it. They'll have to come off, some brackets there, and hopefully I'll show you those. And let's keep going. All right, so took the nuts off these bolts, ended up using a small punch and a ball peen hammer to tap the bolts out. Got them mostly out, and then supported it with one hand, pulled the last 2 bolts the rest of the way out, and then this cross member should just come right down like that. Gain full access to the oil pan. You can see I have some leaks. I've tried to look for them before. I don't believe they're coming from the valve covers, and I'm kind of thinking they could be either coming from the crankshaft front seal behind the harmonic balancer or the gasket on the timing cover, which luckily I'll be in all that eventually, and got new gaskets and seals for those. So hopefully I'll get rid of some of these oil leaks. Kind of ugly. So, all right, so one thing, make sure you remember before you drop the oil pan is to drain your oil. I just took the plug out, and I'm holding it in the sun here, and even though it's an old oil plug and there's little nicks on it and stuff, I don't see any, or an abundance of, or anything really apparent of the little metal flakes or anything like that. And so while the oil's still draining out of here, I'm gonna just take this time to just kind of wipe up some of the rest of the oil splatter, drippage, leaks that I've got in the bottom of this pan and engine everywhere. Just make it a little bit easier when I'm going to clear everything else out. So, one of the things I like to say is always leave it better than when you started. And that goes for if it's my stuff, or if I'm working at work doing repairs, or, you know, and kind of, if you try to leave it better, then it's a good goal to shoot for. So if I get a new part in that's, say, a control arm and it's not painted, I don't want it to just turn into rust into the car. So I take the time to clean it up, degrease it, shoot a little paint on it. May not be perfect, but hey, it's gonna be better than putting something under there that's gonna rust the first time they drive through a rainstorm. So I think being clean pays off. Anyway. Okay, so I'm just cleaning things up and looking, identifying all my bolts first. I remember hearing there's 2 long bolts in the back, and get my light set up here. Pretty sure that this is going to be one of them, and then on the other side, this is the other one, because those go up, they go straight up in the very, very back. I don't think this one is, I don't think that's got to come out, but I'm not totally sure. There's 2 larger bolts. I think they're probably 15 millimeter that go into through the bell housing and into the oil pan. So I'm pretty sure that's going to come out, and the one on the other side in the back. I may go back and watch a video of somebody else that's done it just to double check. I'm not in a rush here today. So this is the one that's in question. Yeah. And then of course there's this bolt right here that goes horizontal into the side. That is the bolt that holds the mount for the cableway that I've heard people talk about in several videos, but haven't seen this one. Haven't really seen it clearly. So I'm behind it looking forward, and there's the bolt in the front driver's side corner. And from what I understand, you take that out and the whole wire loom, you can kind of slide it towards the driver's side a little bit, and it'll drop down and allow you access to the bolts in the very front of the oil pan. So we'll try that in a minute too. And just noticing this guy right here, I don't know if you can see this, yeah, he's loose, so hopefully he's not too critical, although I think he should be tighter than that. So I'll look that up and see what's going on with him. Anyway, just keeping you up to date on what's going on with it. Alright, so in this section I talked about counting all your bolts and comparing them to your new gasket, and you'll see later on that this doesn't always work, and during the reinstall you'll see why. But just keep in mind that it can be a good idea, but it's not always the definitive answer. And I apologize for probably half of this section of the video getting out of frame, and I'm pointing to one side of the gasket and the camera's looking at the other side of the gasket. So anyhow, I just keep in mind that, yeah, you can count your bolt holes on your new gasket, but that doesn't always mean that's how many bolts you're going to be taking out. So thanks for watching, and as soon as this section is over, you can continue enjoying my commentary as it happens. Okay, so I've taken out all the bolts in the oil pan except for one on each side. Now I'm going to try to carefully take out those two bolts, and hopefully the whole thing will come down. Hey, you know, just kind of winging it here, but see how it goes. So this needs to be up out of the way. It's just the wiring harness. And since the driver's side bolt is the easiest to get to and see, I'm going to do the passenger side bolt first. So, getting towards the passenger side last bolt. Alright. So just another point is, these bolts were in there really, really tight. I didn't use an impact wrench to break them loose. I used mostly a 3/8 ratchet. The front ones were extremely tight. I had to put a 1/2-inch drive ratchet. So don't be mistaken by thinking, oh, these are small little 10mm bolts and they'll be easy to come out. Mine were, I'd say, over torqued. So I'm going to look up the torque spec when I put them back in. But 18 foot-pounds for most of the bolts. Now the two long ones in the back are 106 inch-pounds, and then the two that go through the bell housing are 37 foot-pounds. Okay, that's out. Yeah, that's letting it come loose. Nice, lots of oil. All right. Okay, sorry about all that. I took the last bolt out and started to bring it down, and there was a good bit of oil still, I guess still in the oil filter. I probably should have taken that off too and drained it, but anyway, went and got a oil pan, catch pan, put underneath it, and it drained out a little bit, not too bad. There's a little puddle underneath there too. So now I just need to take out the last bolt that I have, which is right there. It's kind of just carefully sitting up in there right now. It looks like the whole thing's going to come right down once I take that bolt out. So I will try to set the camera up so you can see my mess as I'm getting it out, and we'll see how that goes. Last bolt. It's all slippery, of course. All right, so that's out. Set aside. Alright, so I should put the last bolt back in because there's another bolt that goes to, oh, it looks like a dust cover for the bell housing or something. So, anyway, let me back it up here and I'll show you that bolt. Actually, let's go over here. Okay, that bracket, I'm just trying to get you some light. And there's that bolt right there. And that's bolted to the oil pan, and it's keeping me from dropping the oil pan. So I'm gonna put another bolt back in the driver's side and then take this bolt out, and then we'll come down. Okay, so sorry about that. Once I got that bolt out, I didn't want to let it just hang cockeyed on that last bolt that was on the driver's side. So without having 3 sets of hands, I had to hold it with one, take the last bolt out and lower the whole thing down. But this is 288,000 plus miles on this engine. And this is what we're looking at initially. Okay, I'll look at that closer when I take it out, but initially it looks pretty clean up in there. Sorry about that. I guess kind of what I expected to see for the mileage that's on this engine. Have been changing oil pretty regular. Anyway, we'll get this pickup tube taken out and check out the O-ring up there where it goes into the oil pump. Again, that's another 10mm bolt up there.
The two nuts that hold the oil pickup tube are 13mm.
One is right there. The tube comes down, dipstick, and there's the other nut over there. So let me get that taken out and we'll pull this pickup tube. All right, here's the inside of the pan. Yeah, all I can say is it'll look much better when I put it back together. Looking down in here, can't really, I mean, some of the videos look like a lot worse sludge. I think they had run like a quart of automatic transmission fluid through them. I'm not going to do that. I just don't want to take a chance with that. I know a lot of people probably think I'm crazy, but anyway, I'm going to clean this up, make it look good, and at the same time I'll be cleaning up. I'm going to take that pickup tube out, make that look good. Just so you know, when I took all my bolts out, I've laid them out over here. Sorry, I keep turning the phone portrait mode. So I've got my 2 bolts over here for the front of the pan, my bolt that holds the wire harness in. Here's the bolt that holds the transmission lines in. Here's this 3rd bolt over here that held the little cover over the flywheel up by the starter. My 2 15mm bolts that went from the bell housing into the back of the oil pan. My 2 long bolts that go straight up through the long part of the oil pan in the back. And all the rest of the bolts are the same type size. But I just went ahead and laid them out. This is the way they came out. This is where they were. So I'm going to clean all these up before I put those in. So, I'm not sure if this is an instance of if one O-ring is good, then two must be better, or something just wasn't quite right. So I went and I pulled the pickup tube down, and as I was slowly working it down, grabbed my hand on it and I'm gently twisting it and slowly pulling down, this O-ring came falling down, and this O-ring is still, I think it's an O-ring on here. Oh, maybe it's not. Okay, got it. So this is just the ring that holds that O-ring. Well, it's like the backstop for the O-ring. Okay, so it's just the fat spot on the tube. Everything's so covered with oil, I wasn't sure. So this O-ring here was on there like that. Okay. Yes, need lots of cleaning up here. So as I pulled it off, my O-ring, sorry about all that. It's like I look around the camera to see what I'm doing, and then I get it out of the frame. So, but this O-ring appears pretty flattened. Yeah, I would say that it's definitely served its life. No smoking gun though, as far as, you know, it's not ripped or torn or anything like that, as far as why my oil pressure is low. And looking into this filter here, again, no smoking gun. Looks reasonable for 288,000 miles. But anyway, I'm going to spend a good bit of time cleaning everything up. I'm planning on replacing the oil pump. That should arrive tomorrow. So I won't be putting all this back in today. And instead, I'm going to just spend the rest of the day cleaning everything, prepping everything, getting it ready to put back in. And then I'll probably go ahead and pull the fan and the water pump, timing belt or timing chain cover, and getting down and into my oil pump. So I'll get some of that on video also. But that's where I'm at right now. And just keep pressing on. Nothing has been too crazy hard either. So, hoping and praying it just keeps going well. Alright, so I said I didn't notice too much sludge in here. Well, there's a lot. I mean, it's not, there's probably been worse. And this is fine right here. But over here, that's pretty bad. So it will be better once I get all this cleaned up, and before it goes back in, it's going to be a lot better. So here's the oil level sensor. I don't really know how that works, but it does something. Tells you when your oil is low, which is good. Anyway, gonna keep going. Alright, so you can see I've done a little bit. Pulled the air intake plenum off. Just a hose clamp at the throttle body, and then another hose clamp over just past the mass airflow sensor. I left the sensor on there and connected to the air box. Just, to me, it was easier. One less connection to have to disturb. And then there's supposed to be two 10 mil bolts that attach. See, one goes right there, and the other one should go right here. My car has one broken off inside there that it's been broken off for a while, so I had one 10 millimeter bolt to take out. And then there's the little trim clips that just use a trim tool, cheap, and just reaches in there and pops them up. I went ahead and took them all the way out. They look like just a big pop rivet once you pop them up. So got 4 trim clips and then my bolt in there, 10mm bolt. And once that's out, you can lift the whole upper fan shroud out of there. Then the next thing I want to do is pull the fan. And if you put a big wrench on that nut down there, which I think I watched a video, somebody says a 33mm nut. I just use a large crescent wrench. And to keep the shaft from spinning, I saw a pretty cool video where a guy took a 15mm socket, put it on the tensioning pulley right here, and instead of going to like loosen it like you were going to take the belt off, you push the other direction like it's actually counterclockwise, and you're actually pulling tension and tightening the whole belt. And while you do that, it holds your pulley from, I guess, the pulley behind the fan from turning. And it wasn't hard at all to break that fan nut loose. I've done it before, and I don't remember exactly how I got it loose. It's probably something similar to that. Another video had you taking a C-clamp and clamping this belt to the pulley that the fan is on. And I just didn't like the way that it's putting stress on the belt. So I like putting the 15mm socket on the belt tensioner and pulling it tight and then just popping it loose. And now my fan is, once you break it loose, it pretty much comes off. It's unscrewing right now. And it just comes off. Pull it right out. Set it aside. All right, now I'm going to be emptying the antifreeze out of here. And I think I want to just go ahead and pull this lower fan shroud out. It's flopping around in there. It's in the way kind of, so should be able to just get it out. All right, upper and lower fan shroud, fan, and air plenum. So all that stuff came out in about 10 minutes, 10 or 15 minutes. It was pretty easy. So now it's just going to be a matter of draining my coolant and then starting to pull heater hoses and radiator hoses off the water pump. I can go ahead and take my belt off now, and yeah, so once I empty the coolant, then I'll probably have a little bit of mess to clean up from that. But it's like I said, overall everything's going pretty smooth. Yeah, like I said, big mess. So I pulled the lower radiator hose off the water pump. Got a fair amount of antifreeze out. My thermostat is holding back the rest of it. This just seems bad. Alright, let me make sure I'm not making a huge mess underneath here. For the most part, cut a lot of it. Alright, so I'll be taking the water pump off, and there's plenty of videos you can watch to see how to take it off. But the main gist of it is the lower radiator hose, upper radiator hose, they're attached to the water pump, and then 2 heater hoses right over here. So once those 4 hoses are off, then there's 6 bolts, and let's see, 3 of them are on this side. Got 1, 2, 3. The other 3 are 1, 2, and where is it? Yeah, right, 3. So anyway, with those 6 bolts out, the water pump will pull right out. And yeah, so there's the 3 bolts on that side. So anyway, like I said, there's plenty of videos you can watch that give a whole lot better filming of how to take it off. Like I said, my primary goal is I'm trying to get to the timing cover gasket timing cover, take that off to get to the oil pump, to take that out, replace it. So I'm gonna go ahead and take the water pump off, and you don't need to watch me do that. All right, so I don't want to keep getting too far ahead without showing you what I'm doing. I just took the air conditioner belt off, and super easy. Just let you know how it goes. There's a 3/8 hole in the tensioner, and you just take it, push it down, takes tension off the belt, and then with your other hand just flip the belt off, and it goes around the harmonic balancer, over the tensioner, and then around the pulley for the air conditioner, and then back over the top of the harmonic balancer. Real simple, real easy. That's why it's like, you know, most people are smart enough to figure this out. So anyway, just wanted to show you what else I'm doing. All right, so I already started this, but I figured I'd just show you before I get it all the way off. They call it a Chrysler puller, and it's got 3 jaws on it, and the jaws attach onto the back side, so there's little ears. So anyway, that's on there. Started pulling it. I got my impact wrench on it. We'll go the rest of the way. All right, she's off. All right, so I've gotten things cleaned up a little bit here. Not completely. And I've taken 6 of the 8 bolts out of the timing cover. Got the harmonic balancer pulled off, you saw that. And I am just in the process now of taking the last 2 bolts out of the timing cover, and then I'll remove the timing cover and see what we got in there. Right, last bolt. Okay, bolt is out. And there's the oil pump, timing chain, timing gears. Yeah, looks like a 288,000 mile engine, I guess. I've been having a really bad oil leak in the front of the engine. I'm thinking that it might be from this seal. Looks pretty cruddy. Kind of nasty in there, so we'll get all this cleaned up. Got a new seal to put in there. All right, so the reason that we're doing all this is to replace the oil pump. There's 4 10mm bolts. Those 2. And these 2, I already broke them loose, obviously. So, take those out. 1. 2. And I'm ordering a oil pump from RockAuto that is for high mileage engines with increased flow and increased pressure. So I guess that's what you're supposed to order and put on here. Anyway, that's well, All right, so that comes off like that. So I took the metal part of the timing cover gasket off, and the rubber part that was attached to the metal stayed on the engine block. I don't know if you can see this very well, but it's just, well, like this here is just super brittle. It just keeps coming off. So I don't know why I had an oil leak in the front of the engine. Yeah. So all this needs to be cleaned up nice and good. And let's see. Yeah, I'm gonna have to use my other hand and shine the light down there, get at it, but you get the idea. Clean up all the seating surfaces really well, and once everything's clean, then we can start reassembling. All right, so this morning I got up, and after talking with a friend last night, decided that it would probably be a good idea to change my timing chain while I'm in here, and it's probably a no-brainer for most people. I just hadn't planned on doing it, but I got a new timing chain, and this one, I was kind of surprised there was no tensioner in here, but it's pretty loose. I don't know if the new one's going to go on and be that loose or not. So I just removed the 10mm bolts from the upper sprocket, and before I did that, I made sure my timing marks lined up, which here's the timing mark for the upper sprocket. I think you can see it. And the lower sprocket, there's his timing mark, so they're lined up. All right, now I'm going to take the upper sprocket and chain off, and I think it should just come out like that, drop down, and come right out. Okay, so I took my new sprocket, new timing chain, and laid them out on top of the old one, just to make sure everything lines up. My bolt holes line up, the guide pin hole, because there's a guide pin on the engine, and everything, they look the same to me. So there's that. Well, so anyway, I think I'm gonna just go ahead and try to put it on. All right, I don't know if I can do this with one hand, or if you'll even get a decent camera view out of it. I'm kind of catching the bottom sprocket with the chain. And the top sprocket on there. And so that's with one hand. And let's see if our timing marks match up. Sorry about that. Yeah, timing marks are matched up. Everything's on there. Okay, so went in and cleaned my bolts up. I used just a little bit of blue thread locker, and I'm going to torque these down. I torqued one of them down already. It's 26 foot-pounds is the spec. So we got the other two that are due. Just a little bit loose still. Okay. All right, upper sprocket's torqued down. New chain is on. And I can go ahead and take that old crankshaft bolt out. I had to put that in to align the timing marks. So I can take that out now. So one thing that just wanted to point out, on the old timing chain, I had a lot of slop on this side over here. And of course, nice and tight now. This side is not as loose as that side was. So I think that I've improved stuff. It's just a little bit tighter, but it's not too tight that it's gonna not work. Okay, there's my old oil pump. There's new oil pump. Now, reading up and watching different videos and stuff, I think that it's smart to prime the new oil pump. Some guys just pour a little bit of oil in the pickup tube, spin the pump mechanism around, and slap it on. Some people recommend taking a whole new oil pump and putting it in a gallon jug of oil and letting it soak there for a while. I think that I'm going to pour oil into it and move it around, and probably spend a little bit of time making sure oil is all the way around inside the mechanism here. One guy said, you know, pour it in, keep rotating it, keep pouring it in for about 3 minutes. I don't know, I can waste 3 minutes and a quart of oil, not worried about that. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that, and then probably go ahead and put the oil pump on. All right, so poured some new clean oil down in here, twisted the pump mechanism around, had oil coming out down here as well as around the pump mechanism. It's just, you can see it's a mess. I'm glad I did it in the pan. So obviously it's not gonna hold oil, but it does have oil all through it now. So I think I'm gonna put it on, put my bolts on. I need to look up the torque spec, but I think it's 26 foot-pounds for those as well. And keep proceeding on. Okay, so I checked the torque spec for the oil pump, and it's 18 foot-pounds for the 4 10mm bolts. Oil pump is lubricated, on, torqued. The bolts, before I put them back in, I just cleaned them up and oiled them, stuck them in there. All right, so this was very difficult. Here's the old seal. I think it had been in there from the factory. It did not want to come out at all. So tapping around the inside of it, you know, of course it came in from the front, but I was on the back side of it tapping it out. Wasn't getting any movement until I cut a small, tiny little groove, little notch right there, just to give it a little bit of room to compress in as I was tapping it and come out. and that's where I started actually getting some movement. Just had to be real careful when I was cutting not to even touch any of this with the little handsaw I was using, which I was just using a simple little saw like this, probably for wood, but it was cutting through the metal and kind of like a little mini hacksaw. That was difficult. So anyway, now I gotta clean this thing all up, get it ready to install and put the new seal back in it. All right, so I got the old seal out finally and put the new seal in. Got it all mostly cleaned up. There's still a few little stain spots in there that I just get tired of working on it. But I think anything that could break loose and become sludge and debris, I think I've got all that stuff out. So I'll probably just do another, one more quick wipe down and then put a little thin coat of oil on the rubber parts of the seal and then install the timing cover. So I was sitting here getting ready to put the timing chain cover back on. I was reading through the procedure and it talks about putting a bead of sealant between the oil pan and the block and the timing cover up front. So I'm trying to figure that out. When it kind of dawned on me that I think I should go ahead and put my oil pickup tube in right now, since I have my oil pump on. I'm going to attach that. Once that's attached, then I think it would make sense to put the oil pan on and then put my timing chain cover back on. So, a little different from what I said a minute ago, but I'm going to start working oil pickup tube, oil pan, and then get around to the timing chain cover. Just so you know, I went ahead and made sure my new gasket fits. Went ahead and cleaned up the bolt heads and cleaned them all up, and they fit pretty good up into the gasket. So they're gonna just stay there for a little while until we're ready to use that. All right, been working under here just a little bit. I got the oil pan gasket seating surface pretty well cleaned off. Might need to wipe over it a little bit more. I did notice one thing right here. I don't have a bolt hole. So at some point when somebody replaced this thing, they must have broke off a bolt there, or when they were tightening it, they broke it off and removed everything and then sanded it, filled it and sanded it flat. So it's definitely been worked to be smooth. Yeah, hopefully that won't cause any problems. But, all right, go ahead and put in my intake tube. Okay, so I've got the oil pickup tube installed. One thing that I didn't remind you to do, but where'd it go? Right up in here, the O-ring at the top of the oil pickup tube. Make sure you put some oil on it, lube it up really good so that it slides up in there. And then that 10 millimeter bolt goes in the bottom hole on the oil pump. So anyway, hopefully that makes sense. And I think I'm about ready to put the pan on now. Just do another quick wipe of any oil that's got on the seating surface. All right, so the oil pan is mostly cleaned out. It's a whole lot better than it was when I opened it up. All right, so I've got to put this plate back in there. I need to wipe it down. Notice I gotta wipe everything down because when you have dogs and there's fur everywhere in your garage, fur sticks to oil real easy. So anyway, I'll wipe it down and then I'll put that in. All right, So remember I told you that there was a bolt that had been broken off in the engine block and somebody just filled it or smoothed it off and left it there? Well, how about that? That's where the gasket says I should have a bolt, but there's no hole there. And looking at the other side of it, there's a mark from where the gasket was. But that thing has never been drilled or never a hole there. So, I guess in one sense it's nice that nobody broke off a bolt in my engine without me knowing it. I mean, I have taken it in to have them look for oil leaks before. So I don't know if that's when they put a new gasket on the oil pan or if it was before I bought the truck, but interesting. I'm sure that somebody knows, oh yeah, on whatever model make, that hole was never used. Or that's only used for heavy duty and they, I don't know, whatever. But it's not here in my car. It just seems odd. All right, so what I did to make sure the gasket stays pretty well lined up, so I went ahead and put a bolt in the corner here, in the corner here, and about midway down right there, and one right over here. I didn't put one in the ends because those are the ends out here because those are the long bolts, and I think 4 of them would be good to just keep it in place. These front 2, those bolts go into the bottom of the timing chain cover, so those will be empty until we get the cover on. All right, so I've got all but the front 2 bolts for the oil pan installed and finger tight, including the 15mm ones at the back, and no problems. And as you can see, this is that spot where I thought there should have been a bolt, but there wasn't. Really strange. And anyway, just need to go back and look at the torque specs for how to what torque pattern to use. I think it's just probably a star pattern, opposites back and forth, and then what the torque value should be. All right, so don't forget to put your RTV at the back corners of where the block meets the back cover, crankcase cover. Otherwise you'll be taking your pan back down again to put it in there. And I'm pretty sure that once I put the pan up there, I need to put some up at this joint up here once the pan is on there. Okay, so I've got the oil pan on. I attached the transmission cooler lines to the side, and I put the little bolt in the cover plate back by the starter. The long bolts in the oil pan were 106 inch-pounds. Make sure that's inch-pounds, not foot-pounds. The other bolts in the oil pan are 18 foot-pounds. And you start torquing from the middle 2, and you work your back and forth from the middle out to the ends. Now I'm at the point where I'm ready to put the timing chain cover on, and you need to make sure that you put a dab of RTV right there, pretty ugly, and there's a dab over there too. Now I had put it on my oil pan gasket before I even put the oil pan up in there, so there was already some there. I just put a little bit more. Other than that, there shouldn't be any other sealant, any RTV that goes on there, I don't think. So now I'm going to put my timing cover on. All right, so timing chain cover is on. Those bolts are all torqued to 18 foot-pounds. I went ahead and put the cable harness back in this bracket, and the 10mm bolt on that side. Next thing is going to be the Harmonic Balancer, and from what I understand, just a little bit of oil on the where it comes in contact with the seal, and then the slides on, and I've got the Harmonic Balancer insertion tool, so I'll be using that. Well, Harmonic Balancer is on. No thanks to the kit that I got from the parts store. The center bolt was too short and wouldn't engage in the threads on the crankshaft. So tapped it on with a block of wood, used the old mounting bolt, crankshaft bolt, and impact wrench with a washer on it, and drove it all the way in. My belts look like they line up good. Not from this angle with the camera, but when I hold a belt on it, it looks like it's all real good. And now I'm just going to put the final bolt in there and give it a good torque. And it's supposed to be 240 foot-pounds, so we'll see if I can get that. All right, so I told you wrong on the torque spec. When you're putting the Harmonic Balancer on and using the old bolt, you keep turning it until the balancer is all the way on and go to 240 foot-pounds. Then you take that bolt out and use your new bolt, and you tighten it to 37 foot-pounds on the first pass, and then the tech manual says 140 degrees. Made some phone calls and read some blogs. Best I can figure is 140 degrees would be like, if you're looking at a clock, 12 o'clock is 0, 3 o'clock is 90, about 5 o'clock is 140, 6 o'clock is 180. Well, I tightened this one to 37 foot-pounds, and about all I could get was about 90 degrees, and I had set my torque wrench up to 80 foot-pounds, and I was definitely hitting 80 foot-pounds. So I put a little bit of blue thread locker on it, so I feel like it's very tight. I don't think it's coming off. I hope I don't ever have to get it off. So anyway, now what to do next? Water pump. Yeah. All right, so I'll wipe down my seating surfaces for the water pump. A little bit of crud up there, and a little bit, yeah, some crud over there. So I'll clean those up a little bit more, and then we'll be putting the water pump in. All right, so I've got the new gaskets on the back of the water pump, and I've just got my bolts pushed through, holding them in place. And I'm going to turn this guy around and put them down in there and hold the bolts with my fingers to keep them from pushing back through. All right, got the water pump in there. The torque spec on the bolts is 11 foot-pounds on the first pass and 22 foot-pounds on the second pass. So those are in. I got the 2 heater hoses hooked up, the lower radiator hose hooked up, and I think I'm about ready to put the belt on. And then the lower fan shroud, and the fan and upper fan shroud. And I haven't forgot the cross member underneath yet, but I gotta clean, but at least wipe that off. It's got a bunch of grease and crud on it. All right, fan belt next, and that's a 15mm socket on the tensioner. All right, so now got the belt on. Lower fan shroud just sits down in there. And I got a fan here. Okay, spinning that guy on. All right, now what I'm going to do is large crescent wrench here. Oh, I'm sorry, can't see. Large crescent wrench on the fan, and then go back and grab my 15 mil socket for the tensioner. Okay, so now with the 15 mil socket on the tensioner, I'm not going to be loosening tension. I'm going to turn it counterclockwise like I did when I took the fan off, and that'll tighten the whole belt assembly. Like you can see it stretch a little bit. I'll move it. There. So I'll tighten it, and once I'm holding it tight, then I'll use the crescent wrench on the fan to snug it up. And so let me do that real quick. All right, so now that's on there. Next is the upper fan shroud and the upper radiator hose. So let me go grab those. All right, so upper fan shroud is on. Before I go too much further, I gotta remember I disconnected this coolant hose that connects to the bottom of the throttle body. So you just goes right up on there. And then I'll get a pair of pliers and put that clamp on it. And actually, I think I routed it wrong, so I'm going to take that back off and reroute it correctly here in a second. Anyway, all right, so I got this last splash guard up, cross member put back in. Maybe one day when I'm really bored looking for something to do, I'll take it down and clean it and paint it. But I think that's about everything. I've put 2 gallons of 50/50 mix. Dex Cool, or what is it called? I don't remember. I think it's Dex Cool or something. Antifreeze in, and yep, Dex Cool. So I put 2 gallons of that in. I still have a little bit more that's still clean that I had drained out of there. So I think it'll probably take about 2.5 gallons once the engine runs and it tops off. Just have to put in 6 quarts of oil now and hope for the best. I think everything will work good though. I feel like everything I did was right on par, and sorry when we got down towards the end, I was just kind of doing things and telling you, and doing things and telling you, but it's getting about 30 something degrees outside, and even though I'm in the garage, got to have the garage door open because this thing's so long, it sticks out. So it's good and a little chilly, and I'm just kind of tired of working on it. So anyway, that's what it took, and in the description I'll put down what the final result was. Anyhow, thanks for watching. Well, still got a ticking noise. I'm thinking that's the lifters. But my oil pressure is much better than it was. It was like 20 psi at an idle. So now I'm idling and I've got about 45 psi. If I rev it up a little bit, 1500 RPM, I've got 55 psi. 2000 RPM, I've got just over 60 psi. So whether it was the old O-ring on the pickup tube that was not allowing the oil pump to get a good suction, or if the oil pump was worn out, it's much better now. All right, so having finished the job, and I'm moving cars around and backing this out, and let it sit here and idle for a while. And engine is warmed up and oil pressure is still looking good. I'm not hearing the ticking noise anymore. So time will tell, but thank the Lord that it's, and I mean that in a good way. Thank you, Lord, that hard work seems to have paid off, and definitely have good oil pressure. The ticking's not any worse than it was, because it would come and go. I don't feel scared to drive it anymore because only 20 pounds pressure. I think that was not good. So let me rev it one more time and just see what happens. Okay, 1,000 RPM, oil pressure increases. 1,500. 55 PSI. About 2,000. Solid 60 PSI. Oil pump's working great. No ticking noise at all right now. So, I think we're back on the road, keeping it running. That's what I gotta do, just keep it running, along with everything else. So until next time, thanks for watching.